Hey guys, welcome back. Let's do some bass layering. I've got this phase bass here for this beginning intro part, but it's by itself and it's pretty much the only thing really happening aside from the vocal chops. And I have this other bass, this gargle bass that I've made about a week or so ago that we're using a little bit later in the drop, but we're not really using it to its full potential. And I'm not even really sure if I'm going to keep it in the drop, but I do like the sound and I think it could really help for this part in particular. So let's go ahead and make a copy. Just duplicate that track. And then we'll unfreeze it. And get rid of that one part here. Now inside of the actual track, I'm not going to be using any auto pan, so I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, so now let's write in the notes. Some kind of A. So that's what it sounds like. As you know, it's a little heavy in the low end here. And this, the bass that's already here is already supplying the sub. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. And real quick, just so you guys, I'm sure some of you are curious, I'll just open up the Massive and show you what's going on in here. So it's not too complicated, but it's a scrapyard wavetable for oscillator 2. I have oscillator 1 turned off. I'm just not using it. With an envelope on both the wavetable position and intensity knobs. I'm in bend minus plus mode, and that's giving me the majority of my sound. And then I'm running that through a band reject filter. Don't pay attention to this because this is turned off. I'm not using that either. So just one band reject filter, and that's hooked up to macro 1. So whenever I turn macro 1, that's going to cycle through the cutoff. But also what's going on is I have this phase set to the oscillator, and that's also being controlled by macro 1. Now if you notice, I'm side chaining the depth by macro 2. So what that means is the further I turn up the 2 knob, it's going to give macro 1 more depth of control over the phase knob. So since it's turned way down, this is actually only affecting about this much of the phase knob. And that's pretty much the majority of the sound. And then I'm running it through Isotope Trash 2 for some distortion and then a little bit of reverb, 21%, and I've got a little over a second of decay time. And then I've just got some EQing going on in FabFilter. So yeah, that's the sound. And can actually automate some macro 1 here so we can get a little bit of movement. Okay, like that. And what I want to do is sort of variate that each time so that we've got a little bit of movement going on, different movement for each time. Okay. And maybe we'll just have this one close to the max. And then for this last one, maybe we'll have it all the way at the bottom. And we have to make sure that we get the pitch in there because, as you know, this one That one's going up. Okay, let's make sure that the pitch is turned on. And actually, I can delete this low end here. Get rid of that. Save a little bit of CPU. Head to the OS tab. We got up and down by 1 octave. So that's good. Let's modulate that. And usually you want to make sure that you bring it back down to 0 at the end, just so that it resets and you don't get that weird Ableton glitch where it stays pitch bended after the fact. That might not be the right pitch. Let's find out. There we go. Okay, so now that we have it sort of in here, our objective is to isolate which areas of the EQ spectrum this instrument really brings to the table and only have those frequencies in the mix, because this bass is already taking a majority of the spectrum, but by itself it is lacking in some areas, so we need to figure out what we can add and what we don't need from this extra instrument. As you can see already, it adds quite a bit by itself. So definitely more interesting. But let's take a listen to the mix. Okay, so right away, this is too loud, it's too dominant. And it might be a little much in the high end. Let's take a look at what EQ we've got going on here. All right, so we're dipping a little bit in the low mids and we're boosting the hell out of 3K. And I think this might be where our problem is. Might want to take away a little bit of 3K in order to disguise the instrument a little bit. Might be standing out too much. Okay, that sounds a little better. This last bit though, still stands out too much. These sit relatively well, and then this right here just sounds too loud. And the reason for that might be the automation we have. Because as you can see, this is the only one where the phase is completely all the way down. And that might be what's making it stand out. So let's go ahead and just give it a similar automation to another one. Okay, now let's take a listen. Okay, it's a little better. Might want to still turn it down just a bit. That's better. All right, so now we need to figure out what we can take away here. So obviously we don't need the low end. Can shelve that a bit. Go ahead and solo these two. All right, so let me just solo this here, and let's take a sweep of the spectrum and see what frequencies are standing out. Okay, so the low end character is about right around 700. So we may think about boosting that a little bit. Maybe even 1K might be a little smoother. Got most of our buzz around 8K. And that might be standing out a little too much. 2K also seems like it has most of the higher end harmonic character. So let's go ahead and try just boosting this mid region here a little bit. About 3 dB. Okay. Let's move this over a little bit and take it down around here. Okay. All right, now let's listen to that in the mix. All right, definitely sounding better. We're getting there. Just going to duplicate this over here for now. Okay. Now one thing I might want to try here now is raising the side chain, which is going to give the automation we've already drawn in more control over the phase knob. Let's raise that a little bit. Okay, this might be a little high. I'm going to bring it down a bit. Yep, that bit there stands out a little too much. It's a little too different from the rest of them. All right. Okay, so the difference is pretty clear. This instrument doesn't really stick out too much, but when it's gone, you really feel its absence. So that's pretty much all there is to it, really. It comes down to the sound design and the EQing. You got to think about which bass is already dominant, and that is the first bass we put in. That's the dominant sound that's happening, but it's a little lacking in the mid-range. So what we did was added that mid-range with this extra instrument because that's where most of this instrument's movement was. So it makes it a little more interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and fine-tune this a little bit more off camera. And then in the next episode, we'll layer some more sounds. So I'll see you then.